Hi guys, welcome to Multiverse. Today we are going to take a look at our friend, the Black Knight. It's a character that was reoccurring within the pages of the Avengers at various points in the Avengers history. Uh, Originally, the Black Knight was an evil villain that was part of the Masters of Evil, which were a group that were basically nemesis to the Avengers. Uh, But later on, they reinvented the character as a hero. Basically, it was this scientist, Dane Whitman. I think he was the nephew. I think he was related to the original Black Knight, Dan Garrett somehow, Nathan Garrett somehow. And they tried to reinvent the character a few times since. This is pretty much the classic look that I've known the character, well, at least for a couple of decades. It's not quite accurate. Like the light blue part on the chest and the pants should actually be like some sort of a chainmail. Sadly, as often is the case with this universe online, sometimes we have to settle with as close to the character's look as we can. It's not always ideal, but in this case, it's pretty darn close to the character. Basically, the reason why I wanted to create this character's look was thanks to the Green Knight headpiece, the Green Knight helmet that we got thanks to our friend Alan Scott from the Arcane Time Capsules, allowed us to have what is known as a bucket head. There's a few characters that do have a style that often people will call a bucket head because it feels as if the character has a bucket on its head, and this headpiece is a perfect style for some of those characters. Like you can see here, we have here an example of our friend Nova, the Marvel version of Nova, which also has such bucket head. So as soon as I saw that helmet, I knew that I had to make a video about the Black Knight somehow. It took me quite a while before getting around to making this video. Basically, I wasn't able to recreate all the incarnation of the characters. Like there was a time in the 90s where from the Black Knight, they in order to try to quote unquote modernize it, they gave him a laser sword, like almost like a lightsaber from Star Wars. And also they gave him like a brown jacket, and they gave him armored boots, almost like a stormtrooper straight out of Star Wars. You could tell that probably the designer, the artist on the book at the time, probably was a big Star Wars fan and tried to turn our friend the Black Knight almost into a Star Wars like character. Sadly, I wasn't able to reproduce the look, the look of the 90s version of the Black Knight. And throughout the character's history, there was this sort of tug of war between trying to make the character look more modern by giving him high-tech armor or stuff like that, and then someone else would then bring him back to a more traditional, classic medieval look with chainmail, more classic chainmail, and all that kind of stuff. Of course, sometimes the comic book interpretation of classic chainmail still didn't quite look quite medieval enough. But there was, again, as I mentioned, this tug of war between trying to make the character look like a medieval knight, a Black Knight, or trying to make it more modern with more high-tech pieces of equipment and high-tech pieces of armor. So at some point they gave him like these big shoulder pads. They removed the cape because, of course, capes are silly for a lot of people. So again, there was always this tug of war between various eras of the character where creators were trying to either turn him into a more modern character or trying to bring him back more to his classic roots, to his medieval roots. So here we have a similar version of the character's look, but again, going more to a classic medieval look and a little less modern looking. As I mentioned, there was this tug of war between the two extremes. And so at some point they kept like the big shoulders, but they went with more medieval looking shoulders as opposed to having those big high tech shoulders that our character had at some time. And the same with the armor. Again, the chest piece, not exactly it. Like if I could have an armored chest piece with that look, where the blue part would be chainmail, that would be even better. Sadly, as I often say, within this universe online, sometimes you have to settle with the closest approximation of the look that you're trying to achieve for any given character. At some point, they tried to give him those big dragon ears to his helmet. Although the helmet doesn't really look like, we kind of lose the bucket head. If I could have the bucket head with those big ears that we have here, it would be a bit closer to the look that I'm trying to achieve. But again, within the DC Universe Online, sometimes you have to settle with the closest approximation you can. Also, another thing that would happen also from time to time, one of the staple of superhero comics is big primary colors. Once in a while, someone would try to tone down the colors a bit in order to make it, again, more quote-unquote realistic. So they would get rid of, let's say, some of the red of the costume or things like that. Which is always a bit silly in my mind, because that's one of the staples of superhero comics. So if you don't want to have a character that looks like a superhero, that is fine, I suppose. But then don't make a superhero comic. And pretty much the last Black Knight comic that I purchased, it was featuring a version of the character that was called Sir Percy of Scandinavia or something like that. It kind of looked like that, like an odd mixture of black and yellow, with a tiny bit of red to the costume. The headpiece should be actually a full face mask, but again, within the limitations of DC Universe Online, this is about as close as I was able to get, and I still kind of like the look of the character. Doing a bit of research, I saw quite a few variations on that look. So I could have made quite a few variations on that look, but I decided to make just one version that kind of looked like most of the different tweaks that we can see online. But I thought it kind of looked like a nice looking Black Knight. Again, should be a full face mask, and there's quite a few subtleties that are missing, but it's close enough to the comic look. So again, ever since we got the Green Knight headpiece into the game, I've been trying to come up with this look. It took me quite a while because it was a bit more challenging than I thought. But basically, if we go for the classic look that the character had for at least a couple of decades, we can be pretty close to the classic look. If we try to go for another incarnation of the character, in some cases we can get pretty close, but it's kind of hard to be 100% accurate to try to recreate our friend the Black Knight. So that's pretty much it for now, guys. So as always, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.